What if a single manuscript could ignite the flames of human genius across an entire continent? What if the fall of one empire could become the catalyst for the greatest intellectual awakening in history? What if the darkness of medieval times was merely the chrysalis from which the brilliant butterfly of human creativity would emerge? Welcome to Dreamtime History. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications because you won't want to miss any of the incredible stories I'm about to tell you. Part 1. The Awakening when Light Pierced the Medieval Veil, 1300 to 1400. The year is 1453, and Constantinople falls to the Ottoman cannons like a dying star collapsing into itself. But from this cosmic catastrophe, something miraculous occurs. Byzantine scholars, clutching their precious manuscripts like mothers protecting newborns, flee westward across the Mediterranean. In their weathered hands lie the forgotten treasures of antiquity, the complete works of Plato, the mathematical genius of Euclid, the poetic soul of Homer. These refugee scholars arrive in Italian city-states that are already trembling with the first stirrings of something extraordinary. Florence, Venice, Rome, these are not merely cities but laboratories of human potential. Here, the rigid hierarchies of feudalism are crumbling like ancient walls before the battering ram of commerce and creativity. In the shadows of the Palazzo Medici, a young banker named Cosimo de' Medici makes a decision that will reshape the destiny of humanity. He opens his vaults not just to fund trade routes, but to sponsor artists, philosophers, and dreamers. Money, he declares to his skeptical advisors, is merely the servant of genius. And genius, my friends, is the true currency of the future. The medieval world had been a place where knowledge was hoarded in monasteries like precious jewels in locked caskets. Scribes toiled for months to produce a single book, each page a testament to divine truth that could not be questioned. But now, something revolutionary is stirring in the workshops of Florence. Artisans are no longer content to simply copy the past. They dare to improve upon it. Enter Filippo Brunelleschi, a goldsmith's son who gazes up at the unfinished dome of Florence Cathedral with the eyes of a man who sees possibilities where others see impossibilities. The dome has remained incomplete for over a century, a gaping wound in the city's architectural crown. Engineers have declared it unbuildable. The span is too wide, they say. The weight would crush any support structure. But Brunelleschi studies the ancient Roman pantheon with the intensity of a monk studying scripture. He understands that the ancients were not gods, but men who had simply possessed knowledge that the medieval world had forgotten. In his workshop, surrounded by wooden models and mathematical calculations, he reinvents the architectural wheel. His revolutionary double-shell design becomes not just an engineering marvel, but a symbol of human ingenuity triumphing over perceived limitations. As the dome rises stone by stone against the Tuscan sky, something else is rising with it, the human spirit itself. Citizens of Florence gather daily to watch the impossible becoming possible. They begin to whisper among themselves, if man can achieve this, what else might be within reach? The revival of classical learning spreads like wildfire through the intellectual communities of Italy. In the University of Bologna, scholars pore over recently recovered Roman legal texts, discovering principles of justice and governance that make medieval feudalism seem primitive by comparison. In Padua, physicians study the anatomical drawings of Galen with new eyes, beginning to question whether the human body might hold secrets that even the ancients had not discovered. But perhaps the most revolutionary development is occurring in the realm of art. For 1,000 years, European painters had created images that served a single purpose: to inspire religious devotion. Figures were flat, backgrounds were golden, and perspective was unknown. Art was a window to heaven, not a mirror of earthly reality. Then comes Giotto di Bondone, working in the Arena Chapel in Padua like a visual revolutionary. His figures possess weight and volume. His faces express human emotions: grief, joy, contemplation. When people see his frescoes of the life of Christ, they gasp not just at their beauty but at their humanity. For the first time in centuries, religious art acknowledges that divinity might be found not by escaping human nature, but by perfecting it. The transformation is not merely artistic or intellectual, it is profoundly spiritual. The Renaissance represents humanity's growing confidence in its own potential. The medieval world had taught that life on earth was merely a brief, sinful interlude before the eternal judgment. But Renaissance thinkers begin to suggest something revolutionary: that earthly life itself might have dignity and purpose. Leon Battista Alberti, architect and theorist, walks through the streets of Florence with the bearing of a man who has discovered the secret of the universe. In his treatise on painting, he declares that the artist is not merely a craftsman, but a creator in his own right. The painter, he writes, follows nature with his own mind and hand, reproducing on his canvas what the eye sees. This is not mere imitation, it is a form of divine partnership. As the 14th century gives way to the 15th, the Renaissance is no longer a movement confined to a few Italian city-states. It has become a force of nature, spreading along trade routes and through correspondence networks, carried by merchants, scholars, and artists who understand that they are witnesses to something unprecedented in human history. The stage is set for the emergence of figures who will not merely participate in this transformation, but embody it completely. Men and women who will demonstrate that human potential, when freed from the constraints of tradition and superstition, knows no bounds. Part 2. The Titans of Creation: Leonardo, Michelangelo, and the Divine Artists, 1400 to 1520. The year is 1482, and in a workshop in Florence, a 30-year-old man with penetrating eyes and flowing hair bends over his notebook, writing in his characteristic mirror script. Leonardo da Vinci has just completed a commission for the Adoration of the Magi, but he is not satisfied. The painting, like everything else he touches, has become a laboratory for his insatiable curiosity about the nature of reality itself. Leonardo is not merely an artist, he is a force of nature contained within human form. His notebooks, written backwards as if he were communicating with some future civilization, contain designs for flying machines, submarines, tanks, and helicopters. He dissects corpses in secret, mapping the human circulatory system with the precision of a divine cartographer. He studies the flow of water, the movement of clouds, the anatomy of flowers, all in service of a single obsession: understanding the hidden mechanisms of creation itself. Obstacles do not bend me, he writes in his journal. Every obstacle is destroyed through rigor. He who is fixed to a star does not change his mind. In Leonardo's hands, art becomes science, and science becomes art. When he paints the Last Supper on the wall of a Milanese convent, he spends months studying the psychological expressions of his models, seeking to capture not just their physical appearance, but the very essence of human emotion. The work progresses with agonizing slowness. Monks complain that Leonardo stands before the wall for hours without lifting his brush, simply staring at the figures as if willing them to life. When questioned, Leonardo explains that he is waiting for inspiration to strike, because true art cannot be rushed any more than a flower can be forced to bloom. But Leonardo's true masterpiece is not a painting at all. It is the very concept of the Renaissance man himself. He embodies the revolutionary idea that human knowledge need not be compartmentalized, that the same mind that designs war machines can create transcendent art, that the hand that dissects a human heart can paint the Mona Lisa's enigmatic smile. Meanwhile, in the marble quarries of Carrara, a young man named Michelangelo Buonarroti selects blocks of stone with the intensity of a prophet receiving divine visions. He claims that he does not create sculptures, but merely releases the figures already trapped within the marble. "I saw the angel in the marble," he will later say of his David, "and carved until I set him free." Michelangelo's David stands 17 feet tall, a colossus of human defiance carved from a block of marble that previous sculptors had declared unusable. But Michelangelo sees what others cannot: potential where they see flaws, possibility where they see limitation. His David is not merely a biblical hero, but a symbol of Florence itself, young, beautiful, and unafraid to face giants. When Pope Julius II commissions Michelangelo to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, the artist initially protests. "I am a sculptor, not a painter," he declares. But Julius II is not a man to be denied. He envisions a ceiling that will surpass all previous artistic achievements, and he believes Michelangelo is the only artist capable of realizing his vision. For 4 years, Michelangelo lies on his back on scaffolding, paint dripping into his eyes, his neck aching with agony, creating what will become the most famous ceiling in human history. The Sistine Chapel ceiling becomes a visual Bible, telling the story of creation itself. At its center, the finger of God reaches toward Adam, their fingertips almost touching in what becomes the most recognizable image in Western art. But Michelangelo's true revolutionary achievement lies not in the technical mastery of his brushwork, but in his theological audacity. His God is not the distant, unknowable deity of medieval art, but a dynamic, muscular figure who shares humanity's own vitality. His Adam is not a humble supplicant, but a being of divine beauty who receives God's gift as an equal partner in creation. The Sistine Chapel becomes a pilgrimage destination not just for the faithful, but for artists from across Europe who come to understand that the human form itself can be a vehicle for expressing the divine. Michelangelo has not merely painted a ceiling, he has redefined the relationship between humanity and divinity. In Venice, the workshop of Giovanni Bellini buzzes with activity as the master trains a generation of artists who will carry Renaissance ideals to new heights. Among his students is a young man named Tiziano Vecellio, known to history as Titian, who will revolutionize the use of color in painting. Titian's approach to painting is revolutionary in its directness. Where other artists begin with careful drawings, Titian paints directly onto the canvas, building up layers of color with a technique that seems to breathe life into his subjects. His portraits capture not just physical likeness, but psychological depth. When he paints Pope Paul III, viewers see not just a religious leader, but a cunning politician whose eyes reveal the complexity of wielding both spiritual and temporal power. The competition between these artistic titans drives innovation at a pace never before seen in human history. When Leonardo and Michelangelo are both commissioned to create battle scenes for the Palazzo Vecchio in Florence, their rivalry becomes legendary. Though neither work is completed, their preparatory drawings inspire a generation of artists who understand that they are witnessing the birth of new possibilities in human expression. But the Renaissance is not merely about individual genius, it is about the creation of environments where genius can flourish. In the workshops of Florence, masters work alongside apprentices in a system that ensures the transmission of knowledge from one generation to the next. Young artists learn not just techniques, but philosophy, mathematics, and science. They understand that art is not separate from learning, but the highest expression of human knowledge. The patronage system that supports these artists reflects the Renaissance belief in the transformative power of beauty. Wealthy merchants and nobles compete to sponsor the greatest artists, not merely for prestige, but because they believe that surrounding themselves with beauty will elevate their souls. The Medici family becomes synonymous with cultural achievement, their palaces serving as informal academies where artists, philosophers, and scientists gather to exchange ideas. As the 15th century gives way to the 16th, Renaissance art has achieved something unprecedented. It has made the invisible visible, giving form to human aspirations and dreams. The next phase of the Renaissance will extend this creative revolution beyond the realm of art into the very foundations of human knowledge itself. Part 3. The Revolution of Mind, Humanism, Science, and the Printing Press, 1450 to 1550. In a monastery in Mainz, Germany, the sound of metal striking metal echoes through stone corridors with the rhythm of a new age being born. Johannes Gutenberg, his hands stained black with ink, adjusts the mechanical press he has spent years perfecting. The year is 1455, and he is about to unleash upon the world a force more powerful than any army, more transformative than any political revolution: the printed word. Gutenberg's Bible, with its perfectly aligned letters and crisp black ink, represents more than an advancement in bookmaking technology. It is the democratization of knowledge itself. For centuries, books have been the exclusive privilege of the wealthy and the clergy, each manuscript a precious artifact copied by hand over months of painstaking labor. But now, identical copies can be produced by the dozen, by the hundred, by the thousand. The implications ripple outward like waves from a stone cast into still water. In Florence, Cosimo de' Medici immediately grasps the revolutionary potential. He commissions the printing of Plato's complete works in Greek, making these philosophical treasures available to scholars across Europe. For the first time since the fall of Constantinople, European minds can engage directly with the full depth of classical thought. In the workshop of Aldus Manutius in Venice, a new type of book is being born: portable, affordable editions that scholars can carry in their saddlebags as they travel from university to university. These Aldine editions spread Renaissance humanist thought like seeds on the wind. A scholar in Prague can read the same text as his counterpart in Oxford, creating an intellectual community that transcends national boundaries. The printing press becomes the internet of the Renaissance, creating networks of knowledge that transform how humans understand their place in the universe. But it is not merely the distribution of existing knowledge that proves revolutionary. It is the new knowledge being created by Renaissance thinkers who dare to question everything their ancestors took for granted. Enter Pico della Mirandola, a young nobleman whose oration on the dignity of man becomes the manifesto of Renaissance humanism. Standing before an assembly of Rome's greatest scholars, this 24-year-old prodigy delivers what will be remembered as one of the most important speeches in human history. "We have given you, Adam, no visage proper to yourself," Pico imagines God declaring to humanity, "nor endowment properly your own, in order that whatever place, whatever form, whatever gifts you may, with premeditation, select, these same you may have and possess through your own judgment and decision. This is revolutionary theology, the idea that humans are not bound by fixed nature, but possess the divine gift of self-transformation. Pico's vision represents the philosophical heart of the Renaissance, the belief that human beings are not merely subjects of divine will, but partners in creation itself. This humanism does not reject religion, but reinterprets it, seeing in human potential a reflection of divine creativity. The ripple effects of this philosophical revolution extend far beyond university lecture halls. In Florence, the Platonic Academy founded by Marsilio Ficino becomes a gathering place for thinkers who seek to reconcile Christian faith with classical wisdom. Ficino himself spends decades translating Plato's dialogues, but his true achievement lies in demonstrating that ancient pagan philosophy and Christian revelation can illuminate each other. The soul is all things, Ficino writes, echoing both Aristotle and St. Paul. In his synthesis, the human soul becomes a microcosm of the universe itself, capable of ascending through contemplation and love to direct knowledge of divine truth. This is not medieval mysticism, but rational spirituality, the belief that the human mind, properly trained, can comprehend the very structure of reality. But perhaps nowhere is the Renaissance revolution of mind more dramatically embodied than in the life and work of Niccolò Machiavelli. In the aftermath of Florence's political upheavals, Machiavelli finds himself exiled to his small estate outside the city, where he begins writing a book that will scandalize Europe and influence political thought for centuries to come. The Prince emerges from Machiavelli's bitter meditation on political failure. He has witnessed the collapse of the Florentine Republic, the military disasters that followed foreign invasion, the inability of Italian city-states to defend themselves against more unified nations. His response is characteristically Renaissance in its boldness. He will analyze political power with the same objective clarity that Leonardo applies to human anatomy. Machiavelli's central insight, that political effectiveness often requires actions that would be considered immoral in private life, strikes at the heart of medieval assumptions about the unity of moral and political order. Since love and fear can hardly exist together, he writes, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved. This is not cynicism but realism, the recognition that political leadership requires understanding human nature as it is, not as we wish it to be. The scandal of The Prince lies not in its supposed immorality, but in its methodology. Machiavelli approaches politics as a science, analyzing cause and effect, success and failure, with the detachment of a natural philosopher studying the movement of planets. He has secularized political thought, treating statecraft as a human art rather than a reflection of divine order. Meanwhile, in the workshops and laboratories of Renaissance Europe, other thinkers are applying this same empirical approach to the natural world. In Nuremberg, Copernicus studies astronomical observations that seem to contradict the Earth-centered universe of medieval cosmology. His reluctance to publish his revolutionary theory reflects not cowardice, but wisdom. He understands that he is proposing to overturn humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos. When On the Revolutions of the Celestial Spheres finally appears in 1543, it launches what historians will call the scientific revolution. Copernicus has not merely rearranged the furniture of medieval astronomy, he has relocated humanity itself, removing Earth from the center of creation and making it simply another planet orbiting the Sun. The implications extend far beyond astronomy. If Earth is not the center of the universe, then perhaps humanity is not the central focus of divine attention. If the heavens follow mathematical laws rather than angelic hierarchies, then perhaps the entire structure of medieval thought requires reconsideration. The Copernican revolution becomes a symbol of Renaissance audacity, the willingness to follow evidence wherever it leads, even when it challenges our most cherished assumptions. In the medical schools of Padua and Bologna, Andreas Vesalius applies this same empirical rigor to human anatomy. His public dissections of human corpses shock audiences accustomed to theoretical medicine based on ancient authorities. But Vesalius cares nothing for tradition when it conflicts with observation. His On the Fabric of the Human Body, published in the same year as Copernicus's masterwork, corrects hundreds of errors in Galen's anatomy and establishes direct observation as the foundation of medical knowledge. The Renaissance transformation of learning reaches its culmination in the emergence of the university as a center of research rather than merely teaching. At Padua, professors are encouraged to challenge received wisdom and make new discoveries. The university becomes a laboratory for human knowledge, where scholars from different disciplines collaborate in ways that would have been unthinkable in the compartmentalized learning of medieval schools. As the 16th century unfolds, the Renaissance revolution of mind has created something unprecedented in human history. A civilization based on the belief that knowledge can progress, that human understanding can deepen and expand through systematic inquiry. The stage is now set for this intellectual revolution to spread beyond Italy and transform the entire European continent. Part 4. The Spreading Dawn, Northern Renaissance and Global Transformation, 1500 to 1600. The news arrives in Paris like thunder in a clear sky. Italian artists and scholars are creating wonders that surpass the achievements of antiquity itself. King Francis I of France, young, ambitious, and hungry for glory, makes a decision that will alter the course of European culture. He will bring the Renaissance to France, not through imitation, but through importation of its greatest masters. In 1516, an aging Leonardo da Vinci crosses the Alps, his most precious possessions packed carefully in leather saddlebags, not gold or jewels, but notebooks filled with a lifetime of discoveries. King Francis has offered him a position at the Château du Clos-Luz, near the royal court at Amboise, with no duties except to think, create, and share his knowledge with French scholars and artists. Leonardo's final years in France become a symbol of the Renaissance's transformation from an Italian phenomenon into a European revolution. French architects study his designs for ideal cities and revolutionary engineering projects. Court painters examine his techniques for capturing human emotion and natural phenomena. Scientists pore over his anatomical drawings and mechanical inventions. But the Northern Renaissance takes on characteristics that distinguish it from its Italian origins. Where Italian humanism had focused on recovering classical antiquity, Northern European scholars develop what becomes known as Christian humanism, the application of Renaissance learning to religious reform and moral improvement. In Rotterdam, a scholar named Desiderius Erasmus embodies this northern synthesis. His Praise of Folly, written with satirical brilliance, attacks the corruption and ignorance of late medieval Christianity while affirming the essential dignity of human reason. Erasmus dreams of a reformed Christianity that combines evangelical piety with classical learning, faith with scholarship, devotion with critical thinking. Erasmus's letters create an informal network of scholars across Europe who share his vision of learned piety. They call themselves the Republic of Letters, a community of thinkers united not by nationality or political allegiance, but by their commitment to truth and learning. This intellectual commonwealth transcends the political divisions of Europe, creating bonds of friendship and collaboration between scholars in different countries who may never meet in person but who share books, ideas, and discoveries through correspondence. The printing press accelerates this intellectual exchange beyond anything previously imaginable. Erasmus's works are reprinted in dozens of cities, his ideas spreading with viral intensity. When he publishes his Greek New Testament in 1516, correcting errors in the Latin Vulgate that had accumulated over 1,000 years, he provides biblical scholars with tools for understanding Christianity's foundational texts with unprecedented accuracy. But it is in Germany that the Northern Renaissance produces its most dramatic transformation. Martin Luther, an Augustinian monk studying at the University of Wittenberg, encounters Erasmus's New Testament and other humanist works that challenge traditional religious authorities. His famous 95 Theses nailed to the castle church door in 1517 emerge from Renaissance methods of scholarly debate and textual criticism applied to religious questions. Luther's Reformation becomes possible only because of Renaissance innovations. The printing press spreads his writings faster than any previous religious movement in history. Within months of their composition, Luther's pamphlets are being read in taverns and marketplaces across Germany. Humanist educational methods have created a literate middle class capable of engaging with complex theological arguments. Renaissance emphasis on individual judgment provides intellectual justification for challenging institutional authority. The religious upheaval that follows demonstrates both the power and the dangers of Renaissance ideas. The same critical thinking that had liberated art and science from medieval constraints now challenges the unity of Western Christianity. The wars of religion that devastate Europe in the 16th and 17th centuries represent the dark side of the Renaissance revolution, the chaos that can follow when traditional authorities lose their power to compel belief. Yet even amid this turmoil, Renaissance creativity continues to flourish in new forms and locations. In England, the court of Henry VIII becomes a center of humanist learning. Thomas More's Utopia, written in elegant Latin, imagines an ideal society that combines the best features of classical republicanism with Christian social justice. More himself embodies the Renaissance ideal of the scholar-statesman, equally at home in legal courts and intellectual discussions. The English Renaissance reaches its apotheosis in the reign of Elizabeth I, whose court becomes a magnet for poets, playwrights, and scholars. William Shakespeare, son of a provincial glovemaker, creates dramas that combine classical literary techniques with unprecedented psychological insight. His characters, Hamlet torn between thought and action, Macbeth corrupted by ambition, Lear learning wisdom through suffering, embody Renaissance fascination with human complexity and moral ambiguity. Shakespeare's achievement represents the full democratization of Renaissance ideals. Where early Renaissance art had been confined to churches and palaces, Shakespeare's plays are performed in public theaters before audiences that include everyone from nobles to apprentices. The Renaissance exploration of human nature reaches its widest audience in the popular entertainment of Elizabethan London. Meanwhile, in the workshops of Nuremberg and Augsburg, Renaissance techniques of precision manufacturing transform European technology. German craftsmen apply principles of mathematical measurement and mechanical innovation to create instruments of unprecedented accuracy: clocks, scientific instruments, weapons, and navigational tools that make possible the age of exploration. It is no coincidence that the Renaissance era witnesses the European discovery of the Americas. The same spirit of inquiry that drove Leonardo to dissect human bodies and Copernicus to challenge astronomical orthodoxy motivates Christopher Columbus to sail beyond the known world. Renaissance confidence in human capability provides the psychological foundation for voyages that earlier ages would have considered impossible. The encounter with the New World forces Europeans to reconsider fundamental assumptions about human nature, religious truth, and cultural superiority. Renaissance humanists like Bartolomé de las Casas apply their principles of human dignity to defend the rights of indigenous peoples against Spanish colonialism. The expansion of geographical knowledge parallels the expansion of intellectual horizons that characterizes the Renaissance at every level. By 1600, the Renaissance has transformed European civilization in ways that extend far beyond art and literature. Universities across the continent teach humanist curricula that emphasize critical thinking and textual analysis. Scientific method, developed through Renaissance empirical investigation, provides tools for systematic study of natural phenomena. Political theory, exemplified by Machiavelli's realistic analysis of power, has become a distinct discipline. Perhaps most significantly, the Renaissance has created a new understanding of human potential. Where medieval culture had emphasized human limitation and dependence on divine authority, Renaissance thought celebrates human creativity, reason, and moral agency. This transformation of consciousness represents the Renaissance's most lasting legacy: the belief that human beings can understand their world and improve their condition through learning, effort, and collaboration. The Renaissance does not end with a specific date or event, but gradually transforms into the broader intellectual movement known as the Enlightenment. Renaissance confidence in human reason becomes the foundation for scientific revolution, political reform, and social progress that characterizes the modern world. Standing in the Vatican museums today, visitors can still experience the power of Renaissance vision. Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling continues to inspire awe 5 centuries after its completion. But the true monument to the Renaissance is not any single work of art. It is the transformation of human consciousness itself, the liberation of human creativity from the constraints of tradition and authority. The Renaissance taught humanity to trust its own judgment, to question received wisdom, and to believe in the possibility of progress. These ideas, born in the workshops of Florence and spread by the printing presses of Europe, continue to shape our understanding of what it means to be human in an ever-changing world. In every act of creativity, every scientific discovery, every defense of human rights, the Renaissance spirit lives on, a testament to the extraordinary achievements possible when human beings dare to imagine that they can create something better than what they have inherited from the past. Part 5. The Eternal Renaissance, Cultural Heritage and Modern Legacy, 1600 present. Standing in the Vatican museums today, visitors can still experience the power of Renaissance vision. Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling continues to inspire awe 5 centuries after its completion. But the true monument to the Renaissance is not any single work of art. It is the transformation of human consciousness itself, the liberation of human creativity from the constraints of tradition and authority. The cultural heritage of the Renaissance flows through human civilization like an underground river, sometimes visible on the surface, sometimes hidden but always present. In the grand museums of the world, the Uffizi in Florence, the Louvre in Paris, the Metropolitan in New York, Renaissance masterpieces continue to draw millions of pilgrims who seek something more than aesthetic pleasure. They seek connection with the moment when humanity first truly believed in its own unlimited potential. The Mona Lisa's enigmatic smile, viewed by over 6 million people annually, has transcended its origins as a portrait of a Florentine merchant's wife to become a symbol of artistic mystery itself. Leonardo's masterpiece embodies the Renaissance revolution in human consciousness, the recognition that individual human beings possess depths worth exploring, that personality itself can be a subject worthy of the highest artistic attention. But the Renaissance legacy extends far beyond the walls of museums. Every time a student challenges a professor's interpretation, every time a scientist designs an experiment to test received wisdom, every time an artist breaks with tradition to create something unprecedented, the Renaissance spirit manifests itself anew. The cultural DNA of that extraordinary period continues to replicate across generations, adapted to new circumstances but retaining its essential character. In the architecture of Washington, D.C., Renaissance principles of classical proportion and symbolic grandeur shape the physical embodiment of democratic ideals. The Capitol Dome, consciously modeled on Brunelleschi's revolutionary engineering, houses a government founded on Renaissance concepts of human reason and individual rights. Thomas Jefferson, architect and philosopher, designed the University of Virginia with Renaissance beliefs about the transformative power of education, creating an academical village where learning could flourish in an environment of beauty and intellectual freedom. The modern university system itself represents perhaps the most successful institutional legacy of Renaissance humanism. When Harvard was founded in 1636, its curriculum directly reflected the humanist educational reforms pioneered in Renaissance Italy. The liberal arts, grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and music were designed to create not just learned professionals, but complete human beings capable of engaging with all aspects of human experience. Today's universities, from Oxford to Tokyo, from Sao Paulo to Nairobi, continue this Renaissance mission of human development through knowledge. The very concept of academic freedom, the right of scholars to pursue truth wherever their investigations lead, emerges directly from Renaissance challenges to medieval scholastic authority. When a modern researcher publishes findings that contradict conventional wisdom, she follows in the footsteps of Galileo, who dared to support Copernican astronomy despite church opposition. The Renaissance transformation of artistic patronage has evolved into our modern cultural economy. Just as the Medici family understood that supporting artists served both aesthetic and political purposes, today's corporations and foundations invest in cultural institutions as expressions of their values and aspirations. The Guggenheim Museum, with its spiral architecture echoing the upward movement of Renaissance aspiration, houses contemporary art that continues the Renaissance tradition of pushing boundaries and challenging perceptions. Technology has democratized Renaissance ideals in ways that would have astonished even the most visionary thinkers of the 15th century. The internet serves as a kind of digital printing press, multiplying Gutenberg's revolution by factors that beggar imagination. When a teenager in Bangladesh can access Leonardo's notebooks online, when a student in rural Kenya can attend lectures by leading scholars through distance learning, the Renaissance dream of universal education approaches reality. Social media platforms, for all their problems and limitations, represent a radical extension of the Renaissance concept of the Republic of Letters. Scholars, artists, and thinkers from around the globe can share ideas, collaborate on projects, and build intellectual communities that transcend geographic and political boundaries. The speed and scale of modern intellectual exchange would seem magical to Erasmus, who spent months waiting for letters from correspondents in distant cities. The Renaissance legacy appears perhaps most clearly in our modern commitment to human rights. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted by the United Nations in 1948, reflects principles that can be traced directly to Renaissance humanism. When Eleanor Roosevelt chaired the commission that drafted this document, she drew upon centuries of thought about human dignity that began with Pico della Mirandola's Oration on the Dignity of Man. The Declaration's assertion that recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world echoes Renaissance beliefs about the unique status of human beings in the cosmic order. Every human rights movement, from the abolition of slavery to women's suffrage to civil rights, has drawn upon Renaissance concepts of individual worth and potential. In the realm of scientific discovery, the Renaissance legacy continues to shape how we understand our relationship with the natural world. The International Space Station, orbiting Earth as you read these words, represents the ultimate fulfillment of Leonardo's dreams of human flight. The Hubble Space Telescope, revealing galaxies billions of light-years distant, extends the Renaissance revolution begun by Copernicus and Galileo. Medical advances that would seem miraculous to Renaissance physicians, organ transplants, genetic therapy, artificial intelligence diagnosis, build upon anatomical foundations laid by Vesalius and his contemporaries. Every MRI scan that saves a life, every vaccine that prevents disease, every surgical procedure that restores health reflects the Renaissance commitment to understanding the human body through direct observation and systematic investigation. The environmental movement, though it might seem opposed to Renaissance anthropocentrism, actually extends Renaissance principles in new directions. When contemporary scientists study climate change, they apply observational methods pioneered by Renaissance natural philosophers. When environmental activists argue for humanity's responsibility to protect the planet, they draw upon Renaissance concepts of human moral agency and our unique capacity for rational choice. Perhaps most significantly, the Renaissance legacy lives on in our fundamental optimism about human potential. Despite wars, pandemics, economic crises, and political upheavals, most people in the modern world retain a basic faith that human problems can be solved through human effort. This confidence in our collective ability to understand and improve our condition represents the deepest inheritance from Renaissance humanism. The challenges of the 21st century, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, space exploration, climate change require exactly the kind of interdisciplinary thinking that characterized Renaissance polymaths like Leonardo. Just as Renaissance thinkers broke down barriers between art and science, between sacred and secular learning, contemporary innovators must integrate insights from multiple fields to address complex global problems. The Maker movement, with its emphasis on hands-on creativity and technological innovation, explicitly draws inspiration from Renaissance workshops where artists, engineers, and inventors collaborated freely. When a modern entrepreneur develops a revolutionary product in a garage laboratory, when a student learns engineering by building robots, when an artist uses computer programming to create interactive installations, they participate in the Renaissance tradition of learning through doing. Educational reformers increasingly recognize that the Renaissance model of holistic human development offers alternatives to narrow specialization. STEAM education, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, reflects growing understanding that creative and analytical thinking strengthen each other. Students who learn to paint develop visual skills useful in architecture. Those who study music enhance their mathematical understanding. Those who write poetry improve their scientific communication. The Renaissance emphasis on beauty as a guide to truth continues to influence contemporary culture. When architects design buildings that are both functional and aesthetically pleasing, when software engineers create user interfaces that are elegant as well as efficient, when scientists choose research directions partly based on the mathematical beauty of their theories, they follow Renaissance precedent in treating aesthetic judgment as a form of knowledge. Cultural institutions around the world continue to grapple with the Renaissance legacy of preserving and transmitting human achievement across generations. The digitization of Renaissance manuscripts makes these treasures accessible to global audiences while raising new questions about cultural ownership and access. When the Google Arts and Culture Project allows virtual visitors to examine Michelangelo's David in detail impossible for physical tourists, it extends the Renaissance democratization of knowledge into new realms. The ongoing restoration of Renaissance artworks provides metaphors for our broader cultural challenges. When conservators painstakingly remove centuries of dirt and overpainting to reveal Leonardo's original colors, they engage in work that parallels our collective effort to understand and preserve the essential insights of Renaissance culture while adapting them to contemporary needs. As we face an uncertain future, the Renaissance offers both inspiration and warning. Its achievements remind us of extraordinary human potential. Its failures caution us about the costs of progress. The same period that produced unprecedented artistic and intellectual achievement also witnessed religious wars, colonial exploitation, and social upheaval. The Renaissance teaches us that human creativity is morally neutral. It can serve liberation or oppression, enlightenment or destruction. The true measure of our fidelity to Renaissance ideals lies not in reproducing its specific forms, but in maintaining its essential spirit. The commitment to human dignity, the courage to question authority, the faith in reason and observation, and above all, the belief that human beings can create something better than what they have inherited. In this sense, the Renaissance is not a historical period but a perpetual possibility, a choice that each generation must make anew. Standing before a Renaissance masterpiece in a museum, walking through a city shaped by Renaissance urban planning, reading books made possible by Renaissance printing technology, benefiting from scientific knowledge gained through Renaissance methods of investigation, we participate in a conversation that began 5 centuries ago and continues today. The Renaissance lives not in the past but in the eternal present of human aspiration, reminding us that in every act of creation, every moment of discovery, every defense of human dignity, we have the opportunity to participate in the ongoing renaissance of human possibility.